The next founder we'll be discussing is Francis Hopkinson, who, in a fashion, is the artist of the American Revolution. So Francis Hopkinson was working in New Jersey. He was actually part of the New Jersey Royal Council, which was essentially the cabinet for Royal Governor William Franklin. Now, he sticks with there pretty long, but once the American Revolution starts really warring, well, Francis Hopkinson leaves that position and sides with the Patriots. It's not long after that that he's chosen as a representative of New Jersey to the Continental Congress. Francis Hopkinson goes to the Continental Congress. 3 weeks later, they have a vote on independence. Mr. Hopkinson votes for independence and would sign the Declaration of Independence, and probably most famous for signing the Declaration of Independence. But I will say, while he's in Congress, he's actually really important to the Navy. He serves, I believe it was 2 years on the Navy Board, which oversaw the creation of the fledgling American Navy, which was never gigantic, but it was there. And additionally, he helps to transition when the French arrive with the might of their Navy to help the Americans. Francis Hopkinson is one of the people, as a member of the Navy Board, who helps accumulate them, not accumulate, acclimate, sorry about that, acclimate the French Navy to join the American forces, for lack of a better term. After this, he actually goes on to become treasurer of loans, which was a really interesting position because first it was crucial in helping to establish the Continental, which they hoped would become a legitimate currency. That did not happen, but that was the valiant attempt. But he also really dealt with anything between the Continental Congress and loans from, we usually think, oh, we got loans from Holland, and we got loans from France, and we got loans from Spain. That's not really how it went. The governments did loan us some money at points, but it was usually the government gave permission to private banks and private citizens to make loans to the Americans. And so therefore, he was involved with overseeing that little escapade. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, Francis Hopkinson is really known as the artist of the American Revolution, and this is for a few reasons. He wrote a bunch of poetry books and some essays and stories. He's a really great writer. He wrote a song called "My Days Have Been So Wondrous Free." Now, this has been argued to be one of the first secular songs written and published in North America. This is arguable. I would probably argue he is not. There are several other ones. I was talking with Jane Calvert recently about the Liberty Song, for example, which was from a decade before this. He also wrote something called Temple of Minerva, which might be the nation's first opera. And there's a better argument that Minerva is the first opera, as opposed to Wondrous Free being the first song. Either way, just indicating what an artistic soul this gentleman was. And not only that, but, he was working for the United States, the Continental Congress, and he was asked to do something else. As a member of the Navy Board, he was told, hey, can you make an American flag for the United States of America? And while we like to think Betsy Ross did this, and we'll save her story for another time, the truth is the actual design of the American flag was by Francis Hopkinson. And he decided to, and I'm going to pop myself out here. Now, this flag in the background is a Bennington flag, and there's a whole story behind this. But I wanted to point out that this flag is wrong, according to the United States. Because what Francis Hopkinson did is he decided, hey, we should have red on the top and the bottom. And the reason we were having red on the top and the bottom is because at a time when the flag flying on top of a ship at sea was very important, it would be easier to distinguish the American flag on the background of the sky on the open ocean if the top and bottom were red than if it were white. So, that being said, back to Francis Hopkinson, he designs the flag. He doesn't really draw the flag. He comes up with the standard, as it's called, of how the flag should look. Again, the stars themselves were a little all over the place for a while, and have changed throughout the centuries. But the stripes have remained the same. Thank you to Francis Hopkinson. Hey, what else did Francis Hopkinson do? How about design the Great Seal of the United States? Now, there were certain other people who had some input on this, but the first time it was drawn up by Francis Hopkinson. There were actually a bunch of other things too. Those are the two most noteworthy things he did. But what we think of when we think of the design of the United States, for lack of a better term, the brand marketing of the United States really fell on Francis Hopkinson. Again, between the American flag and the Great Seal of the United States, we still use those to this day. Very interestingly about Francis Hopkinson is he designs these things for the United States, and he does this while he's a member of the Navy Board and a delegate to the Continental Congress. But hey, what does he decide? He says, hey, I'm doing all this artistic work. I should probably be paid for my work, right? And he goes to his fellow delegates of Congress, says, can you guys pay me for this? And he sends them a list, an interesting list. I wish I linked it below. I forgot to, but an interesting list of his demands to be rewarded for his work, including a quarter cask of wine he wants from the Continental Congress. They actually debate this for several months until finally their resolution, they say it in nicer terms than this, but essentially they say, no, you're a delegate, and part of your duties as delegate was to create these things. So, no. Thank you for your service. You did a great job. People 250 years from now will still have that flag in front of their house. Great job, bud. No payment for you. Their attitude was you should have been rewarding a stipend and been rewarded a stipend from your state as a representative, and that should pay you for all of this. And furthermore, the last thing really of note of Francis Hopkinson, and there's a bunch more I could go into, but he ends up becoming a Federalist. And one of the anti-Federalists writes a paper they publish anonymously in New Jersey. And Francis Hopkinson, being a great writer, responds to this with a piece called The New Roof, where he essentially claims that he promotes the United States Constitution and ratification of it, and Pennsylvania would ratify very quickly. And Hopkinson in The New Roof basically has an allegory for the United States where he says, you know, there was a house here and it's not doing very good. And you hire an architect to come in and redesign the framing of the house. And you got to pull some boards down and put some new boards up. But you can save this house. We're just going to give it a new roof. And he compares the people who wrote the United States Constitution, many of whom were his friends, to the architect and the laborers who put a new roof and fix up some of the boards on an old house to make it bigger and better than it ever was. So that is an extremely brief overview of the life of Francis Hopkinson.